بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today in our Umdat Al Ahkam we will begin inshallah to study the chapter that deals with inheritance. And as you know, Umdat Al Ahkam is not a detailed book. It is a summary that gives you a very brief yet concise amount of information for you to have knowledge about almost everything that deals in fiqh, but in a very easy and light manner. And the book or the chapter that we're talking about is inheritance. Inheritance is a very detailed and very highly technically level of science, and that is why rarely you will find someone who is qualified to give verdict or a fatwa on inheritance, though the evidence of it are found in 3 verses of the Quran only and a number of hadiths. So it should be easy, but it deals with a lot of calculations and a lot of do's and don'ts, and this person would inherit if there is no so and so. If there isn't, then there is. So, and the verse of Surah An-Nisa, يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين فإن كن نساء فوق 2 فلهن ثلثا ما ترك وإن كانت واحدة فلها النصف ولأبويه لكل واحد منهم الثلث. And it goes on. But if this, then this. And if this, then this. And this confuses people unless they go and study this beautiful science and structure it. And this science, also like most of sciences, it depends on practice. So they say practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. But if you, for example, look at prayer and Hajj, issues related to prayer are known almost to everyone. Why? Because they do it 5 times a day. They're regularly asked. It comes up, and yes, well, sujood al-sahw, when to do it, before salam or after salam. It's always there. When it comes to Hajj, it comes once a year. So you ask people, what are the pillars of Hajj? I don't know, I forgot. Okay, what do? We go to Muzdalifah first or to Arafat? I have no idea. People need to be reminded all the time. Likewise, inheritance. How many times do you get people dying and coming to you and say that a wife lost her husband, how much is inheritance? People usually don't ask about this. So you should be careful in seeking knowledge and acquiring knowledge of this beautiful science and the things related to it. Now, let us take the first hadith and then we will go on from there, inshallah. Who will read the first hadith? Okay, the brother there.
Ibn Abbas, Allah be pleased with him, reported that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam as saying, "Give the shares of the inheritance to those who are entitled to them, and what is left from those who are entitled to it goes to the nearest male heir." In another narration, distribute the wealth amongst the heirs according to the book of Allah, and what is left out of them goes to the nearest male heir.
Okay, now this hadith or these 2 narrations, we learn from them that the distribution of the inheritance must be given as stated in the Quran to those who are entitled to them. And who are those who are entitled to them? Meaning that there is the word of al-fara'id, farida. And farida is a prescribed portion, a prescribed percentage. So the Prophet is telling ﷺ that give the prescribed percentage or portion to those who are entitled to them. And if there is anything left, then give that to nearest male heir. Okay, now we understand that there are 2 types of inheritance from this. One type is through prescribed portion, which is al-fara'id. The second type is, if there is no prescribed portion, then he would inherit through his kinship, through his closeness to that deceased. Again, this is a little bit dodgy and foggy. No problem. There is a third type, which is through allegiance. When you free a slave, and we will come to talk about that. Let us take it from the very beginning. Sheikh, you said fara'id, and you said portion, you said percentage. What are these? In the Quran, we have 6 portions or percentages mentioned in the Quran. 3 of them is 1, half of it and half of it. And the 3 of them is also 1, half of it and half of it. Let us look at the first portion. 2/3. What is half of it? 1/3. What is half of it? 1/6. So this is the first portion. The second portion, half. What is half of it? 1/4. What is half of it? 1/8. These are the 6 percentages or portions mentioned in the Quran. Who has them? It's a long list. But for example, for the first portion, 2/3. Who gets the 2/3? The sons. The son gets no portion at all. The sons do not inherit by portion at all. They inherit by a ta'asib, meaning by their closeness to the deceased. So who inherits 2/3? It's mentioned in the Quran. If the deceased had no male inheritors and he had females, if they are 2 or more, they will get 2/3. If she is only one girl that he leaves behind, she would get half. So these are for the girls, for the daughters. Half of the 2/3 is 1/3. Who gets 1/3? The mother gets 1/3, providing he does not have children. The father gets 1/3, providing he does not have children. As mentioned in the Quran, فَلِأُمِّهِ الثُّلُث. That is, if he does not have offspring. But if he has offspring, then the mother gets 1/6. So this is another portion of 2/3, 1/3, a sixth. And there are other people who would get 1/6 as well. We don't want to get into too many details because we have brothers, siblings, and we have half brothers from the mother's side only. These also get 1/6 in certain conditions. Half. Who gets a half? We just mentioned one. A daughter, if she's one and there is no male siblings of her. In the hadith of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, if he had died, his daughter would get half. Okay. Is there anyone who gets half? A husband. If a woman dies, leaving a husband, and she has no offspring, she has no children, the husband gets 1/2 of what she leaves behind. A quarter. Who gets a quarter? A husband gets a quarter. When? His wife dies and leaving a son or more, a daughter or more, any offspring, he would automatically get 1/4. Also, the wife gets a quarter. If the husband dies, leaving no offsprings. But if he dies, leaving a child or more, she gets 1/8. So these are some of the percentages mentioned in the Quran. Actually, they are the only percentages, the 6 types as we divided it: 2/3, 1/3, 1/6, half, quarter, and 1/8. So now we know that these are the types that Allah Azza wa Jal allocated a certain percentage of. If we give them what Allah has prescribed, the rest goes to what is known as al-asaba. And al-asaba itself has a number of rulings, in the sense that who inherits from al-asaba? The closest to the deceased. How do we know the closest? The closest person to the deceased is his offspring. Then followed by his parents, his father, that is. Then followed by his siblings, brothers, followed by their offspring. the offspring of the brothers, followed by the uncles, then followed by the cousins from the uncle paternal side. The maternal side have nothing to do with al-asaba. And then afterwards, we go to al-wala, which is the pledge of allegiance, which results from freeing a slave, as we will talk about this inshallah in the future. Now one says, if the son is the closest to the deceased, why doesn't he get a prescribed percentage? When you give a prescribed percentage, this is limiting what you have. Let us assume a man dies, leaving a wife, a father, and a son. We give those who have portion or prescribed percentage, first thing, their percentage. So the wife gets automatically how much? No, 1/8. The wife gets 1/8, as described in the second verse of the inheritance verses in Surah An-Nisa. And the father gets 1/6 because he has a son. So 1/8 and 1/6, you combine this, and then all of the rest, regardless of the percentage, goes to the son. It shows you how strong the son is, that he takes everything else. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah we'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Continuing on this beautiful topic of inheritance, there are those who block others, meaning that if they exist, others who are relative of the deceased would not get anything at all. So if there's a father, and this is the classification of those who will inherit, you have what is known as usul, which is your fundamentals. Who are your fundamentals? Your father, mother, and anyone who goes on top. Grandfather, grandmother, great-great-grandfather, all of these are your fundamentals or your usul. So this is number one. And you have furu', and these are your descendants, your sons, grandsons, daughters, etc. And you have what is known as hawashi, those who surround you. They're not from top and they're not from bottom, but they are on the side, such as siblings, such as uncles, cousins, etc. Nephews. There are people who block others. So for example, children, offspring, are not blocked by anyone. They will get, the parents, no one can block them. They can reduce their percentage, but never block them. And likewise, the spouse, whether a husband or a wife, no one can block these. They will inherit, they will inherit. But they may be reduced. So instead of the mother getting 1/3, she may get a 1/6 if he has offspring. Instead, the husband getting half, he would get a 1/4 if she has children. The wife, instead of getting 1/4, she would get 1/8 if he has offspring. And likewise, the children will get depending on their number. So if it's one son, he will get everything else. If there are 5 sons, they will share everything else, etc. Now, why would we say that this and this would inherit? Who blocks who? A brother of a deceased is automatically blocked if there's a father or if there is a son of the deceased. Why? Because they are closer to the deceased from the sibling. A man dies, leaving one son, his brothers would not get a single thing. Okay, what his sisters? Not a single thing. As long as the son is there or more, he takes everything else. Assuming that he doesn't have any sons, or he has daughters, but he has a father. So we will give everyone his prescribed percentage. The daughter would get her percentage, the mother. The father would get his percentage, which is 1/6, and the rest goes to him. Because he's a asaba, he's a strong one. We said children, male sons, and then fathers. If there is no father, if there is a grandfather, the father of a father, and there are siblings, the siblings don't get anything. They're blocked. And so on. There is a system that governs this. You know who blocks who and who reduces and what are the percentage of it. Now, inheritance has reasons. Meaning, Can I inherit the brother? We're good friends. We went to the same school, to the same university. We share the same house. And for 70 years, we've been living as best friends and he died. Can I inherit him? The answer is no. Why? He said, because you're not related to him. Then relation to him is one of the reasons for inheritance. What are the reasons of inheritance? There are three. The first reason is kinship. So I can inherit only those related to me through kinship. And this is known as ar-rahim. And why do we call the womb in a woman's body as ar-rahim? Because this is where a child is conceived and your siblings come from the same womb. And your, for example, cousin, you share the same womb in great-grandmother. So this is why your kinship is important. The second reason for inheritance is marriage. So I can inherit my wife, though she is not related to me through kinship, but through marriage, which is, Allah described it in the Quran, a strong bondage. وَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. It's a strong bondage, marriage. It's not something easy to take lightly. And the third reason for inheritance would be the inheritance through a pledge of allegiance. And this allegiance comes when I have a slave and I free the slave. Then this means that I have the right to inherit him if he does not have any proper heir. So let's assume that the man married. I freed him, he was my slave. And he has a daughter and he dies. I'm the one who freed him. The wife gets how much? 1/8. It's a quarter or an eighth. You have to memorize the ayah of the Quran in Surah An-Nisa. Without it, you cannot accomplish anything. So the wife gets 1/8. The daughter gets half. Very good. The rest goes where? The man has no relatives. It goes to the one who freed him. So this is beneficial for me and an incentive to free people. Now, is it the other way around or is it one way? It is one way, from the higher to the lower, meaning I inherit him, but he does not inherit me. I inherit him because I freed him, and we will come to discuss this inshallah later on. So this is roughly what inheritance is about. The following hadith we will talk inshallah, if Allah gives us life to make another program, we will talk about what prevents people from inheriting one another, the things that prevent them. And we open the floor for any questions if you have.
A man has two wives, okay? So the first wife has 4 children and the second has 1 child. So here the disputes between this country, even I got many questions on this, that how the property should be divided. Is it to be divided between the wives, that 50-50, then divided among the children, or it will be divided amongst the children directly, like 5 children?
Now, to not confuse yourself, in issues of inheritance, a lot of the times people say, a husband died and his wife did this and the mother did that, and meaning depending on the person asking the question. Usually I get a brother and says, my father died and my mother, how much will she get? When you tell me my mother, I will automatically think of the mother of the deceased. Whenever you ask a question about inheritance, relate everything to the dead person, not to you. So you don't say, my father died, no. You say, a man died, leaving 6 boys and 3 girls. Don't say, leaving me and my brothers and my sisters, you confuse the man. So say, the deceased died, leaving behind 6 boys, 3 girls, a father and a wife. Because when you say a mother, immediately he would think that this is the mother of the deceased. No, this is the way you say it, first of all. So now identify, who's the deceased? The husband? Okay. Then in this case, the question would be, a husband or a man dies leaving 2 wives and 6 children, 10 children, 100 children. It doesn't matter to me who has how many children, because they are all the children of the same man. Khalas. Don't confuse yourself when you look and study the inheritance. Don't look at your relationship with him. So a man dies, leaving 2 wives and 4 boys and 2 girls. How would I divide the inheritance? Immediately. What does Allah say about the wife? How much does she get? 1/8. This means that the first wife gets 1/8, the second wife gets 1/8. If he has 4 wives, then I get 1/8 to each. Then they will get half of the inheritance. No. 1/8 goes to all of his wives. So if he has 1 wife, she's lucky she has 1/8. If he has 2 wives, she gets 1/16. Oh, I'm losing. If he has 4 wives, and that is why in Arabic, what do we call the second wife? In Arabic, it's called darrah. And darrah comes from the word darar, which means harm. And a second wife is usually harmful to the first wife because this would take half of her time, one day here, one day there. She would take some of the provision of the husband, and when he dies, she would take half of the inheritance. So wives are sharing in 1/8. The rest is divided on the boys and the girls, the offspring, where the boy would get 2 shares and the girl would get 1 share. So this is easily multiplied. The boys, if they're 4, this means that they're 8 shares. And the girls 2, there are 2 shares, so the rest would divide it over 10, and you give each one what they need. Yes, sir.
If a man's mother died and his father took a stepmother, so will the stepmother take from the inheritance?
Now, again, give me the question. A man dies, leaving behind a father, and stepmother doesn't inherit at all. Only the mother that inherits. Stepmother has nothing related to me. Those are related to me as mentioned before, either through marriage, I'm the one who's married, or through kinship, meaning my stepmother has nothing related to me in kinship, or through al-wala, the pledge. Other than that, she does not marry. I'm afraid that this is all the time we have. Write your questions down, and when we meet next time, inshallah, we'll try our level best to discuss your questions. So until then, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.